There was a meeting today between President Francois Hollande and President Barack Obama in the Oval Office, their first meeting face-to-face. They reiterated that the Eurozone crisis is likely to dominate the G8 talks. Both men emphasised that they want Greece to remain a member of the single currency. This happened roughly at the same time that there were reports coming out of Europe that Berlin, that Chancellor Merkel had phoned the Greek caretaker government to suggest possibly a referendum on Greece continuing in the Eurozone. Reports that Berlin is now emphatically denying. So there is quite a bit of confusion. There is certainly concern about the prospects of an economic collapse in Greece. And US officials have been very clear that one of the sessions in the next 24 hours at the G8, which is going to be held at this rural retreat in Maryland, will be dedicated to the Eurozone crisis and coming up with some sort of coherent response and ensuring that everybody is speaking off the same page.
Are there any concerns at this stage that the economic woes in Europe are actually leaking into the US and affecting the presidential race this year?
Oh, there's definitely concern about that. I mean, the growth here in the US economy has been weak. President Obama has been clear that there's more work to do on the jobs front with a US economy that's growing fairly slowly. There are real concerns about turbulence coming out of Europe impacting politically here on the presidential race. But you saw it was a down week on Wall Street here, despite today's Facebook launch. A disappointing week. That's directly related to concerns about what's going on in Europe. So yes, it's already being felt here, and there is real concern about what happens if there is a collapse in Greece, what happens with regard to Spain. The markets, investors here are very nervous.
And of course, we also have Prime Minister Julia Gillard arriving in the United States for the NATO talks in Chicago this weekend.
Yes, she's arriving tomorrow into Chicago. Essentially, this is a two-stage diplomatic effort by the Obama administration. Tonight and indeed tomorrow, the US president sits down with the leaders of the world's most advanced economies, the Group of Eight, at Camp David. It'll be the biggest gathering of world leaders at Camp David ever. They're staying in rustic cabins in what the White House is describing as a back-to-basics approach. Then the president goes to Chicago, where early next week, your time, he will sit down with the 28 NATO members. Afghanistan will be top of the agenda. Then there is a wider session involving partners, non-NATO members with troops in Afghanistan. That is, of course, where Prime Minister Gillard comes in. The administration very carefully ahead of time is saying that they're not seeing this as a pledge conference. They're not necessarily looking for specific sums of money to support the Afghan government beyond 2014, but they have noted that Britain, Australia and Germany have already offered sums. In Australia's case, $100 million. Britain's case, $110 million. Germany, $195 million US dollars. So there is that pressure. They need to raise over $4 billion. And big protests are planned. We're already seeing large protests on the streets of Chicago today.